Let me show you Mohammed El Halabi. He's either the most disgusting thief of our charity dollars, giving them to some of the world's worst terrorists, or else is the victim yesterday of a gross injustice by one of Israel's courts. Now, Halabi worked for the charity World Vision in Gaza, a territory next to Israel, run by the Hamas terrorist group that has often launched rocket attacks and terrorist attacks on Israel. Now, Israeli security forces arrested him 6 years ago, saying he'd actually been recruited by Hamas to infiltrate World Vision, and that he then sent millions and millions of dollars of World Vision money to Hamas, including for its terror operations. And that money included donations from Australians personally and the Australian government. Now, Halabi was yesterday found guilty by an Israeli court, but Tim Costello was actually head of World Vision Australia at the time of the alleged crimes. Today said, "This is nuts."
An innocent man has been found guilty with no evidence produced. This is not a legal trial. This is a political trial. You know, it started with the ludicrous claim that he had transferred $50 million US.
Now, the prosecutors in this case said Halabi actually confessed in jail, but has since withdrawn that, and much of the evidence against him, yesterday's judgment as well, is classified for security reasons, so we can't even tell what the real case against him actually is. And what's more, when our own Department of Foreign Affairs looked into this, it said it had uncovered nothing to suggest any diversion of government funds administered by World Vision in Gaza. So, if you don't trust Israel, Halabi is a martyr. And already this is becoming a bit of a cause. But if you do trust Israel, you can't prove he's guilty. So to try to figure out what is going on, let's talk to Professor Gerald Steinberg, who's the founder and president of NGO Monitor, looking at charities like World Vision operating in this area. He's also Professor Emeritus at Israel's Bar-Ilan University. Professor Steinberg, thank you so much for your time. Can we trust this judgment?
It's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of looking at the details. Unfortunately, Tim Costello has a long record of erasing the details or avoiding the details. One could use sharper, harsher language. But the judge's verdict is very, very clear. There are 23 pages that were made public. There are many, many details, lots of evidence, and it shows that World Vision was really, really negligent. And I want to quote one very short excerpt from this 23-page document. It's available it's being made available in English. It's worth reading for every Australian because it's taxpayers' money that is going to this cause. They are apparently trapped. This is about World Vision testimony from staffers. They are apparently trapped in a preconceived notion that does not accord with the circumstances in the region. He's talking about terrorism. What happened was that this money was given to Hamas, a terrorist organization, and World Vision was essentially blind. They said that they only gave less than 50 million, 23 million, I think was the number. But in fact, World Vision's own documents say that there was over $100 million that were transferred to the branch of World Vision operating in the West Bank, Gaza, and in Israel. So in fact, Mr. Costello is even contradicting his own institution's documentation on this. So I would say it's not a matter of trust, it's a matter of asking the difficult questions. And I would hope that Mr. Costello will address the evidence and not simply continue his propaganda campaign.
I should just clarify, Tim Costello said their total budget was 23 million or 22 million, not that he agrees that Halabi then sent it to Hamas, that money, he says, is innocent. But can I just ask you, what is a lot of the evidence is censored, so we don't know, but of what you do know, what was the most persuasive thing for you that Halabi is guilty as charged?
There are a series of incidents where Halabi was shown to have been present, including in specific Hamas military installations. It's important to remember that a number of Israelis have been killed and wounded by Hamas rockets sent from Gaza, thousands of them, by the terror tunnels that were built. And all of that material, certainly for all these miles and miles of terror tunnels, was stolen from international aid. And World Vision was one of the main donors, and they had almost no oversight as to what was being done with that material. And so in the verdict, first of all, the indictment, which was very detailed, and then in the verdict, the indictment was 6 years old. plenty of time for World Vision to respond to the details, but in the verdict itself, it talks about the way in which Mr. El Halabi took World Vision funds and transferred that in order to buy materials that were used for making those terror tunnels from which the rockets were sent, from which the whole Hamas terror operation is controlled. It talks specifically about some outposts, some specific hard points that military installations that Hamas built from the stolen money. One is called Escalon, another one is called Philistine, and they're located near the crossing, near the border with Israel. All of those are very specifically detailed, where Halabi was present, and the evidence shows that. Now, if the World Vision people have evidence, have reason to think that that is not the case, they should present it. But in fact, the trial did not, from what we see, the defense was not about whether, in fact, the evidence was correct, but it was all about saying World Vision monitors and World Vision knows what's going on and we have trust in our employees. But in fact, the details do not reflect that at all. It really is a case of a very costly negligence, not just for Australian taxpayers, but also for the Israelis who are at the other end of this kind of terrorism. There's one other quick point. The Australian government said they didn't find any evidence of diversion. They also didn't say that they found any evidence that World Vision had not diverted because the audits were not made available. So we don't really know, and neither does Australian taxpayers, what actually World Vision knew. And for that reason, the Australian government has not resumed for all these 6 years the funding. The same is true for Germany and other countries that funded World Vision at the time.
It's an extraordinary case if the case is true. Extraordinary example of how, wanting to do good, eyes shiny bright, not wanting to think badly of anyone, we end up funding terrorism instead. I mean, it's just so astonishing. What does this case actually tell you, do you think? What's the message here?
Oh, the due diligence is central in all of this for anybody who's putting money into an area that's run by terrorists. Gaza is controlled by a terrorist organization, Hamas. Everybody agrees that they are a terrorist organization, everybody except maybe Palestinians and their supporters. Their entire effort is focused on using whatever resources are available in order to launch terror attacks. So if you're going to give them millions of Australian dollars or American dollars or euros or any other currency, particularly from public funds, you better make sure that you know where the funding is going. The biggest problem in all of this is that World Vision closed its eyes. It says, we trust our people. We're not going to look. I had an interesting conversation shortly after Mr. Halabi was arrested with two senior members of World Vision staff, one based in the region, one based in Australia. And they said, well, we had gone to Gaza once in a while, and the people there showed us how our money was being used. They showed us the land that was being cultivated for agricultural purposes, and that's important aid. And I said, well, did you ask or did you bother to check, try to see what was going on underground? They said, oh, no. This is World Vision senior staff members. We didn't know what was going on underground. And of course, that one sentence tells you, I think, everything about the lack of due diligence in where this money goes. If you're giving money to to a framework which is controlled by terrorists, you really have to do a lot more than just trust your people that they know that they're not going to divert it. And that's what this case demonstrates, not only for World Vision, but for aid in these kinds of regions everywhere.
Yes, well, Australians have notoriously been people that like to trust people overseas. We're the easiest people to rip off in foreign markets, etc., etc. But I don't think that's the way to go, as you say, when you're in a territory like Gaza. Professor Gerald Steinberg, thank you so much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it.